What if every country in the world suddenly had 50 nuclear weapons? Tomorrow morning, every single nation recognized by the United Nations wakes up with 50 nukes parked on their soil. Each one is 25 megatons. That is more than 1,000 Hiroshimas per bomb. 10 of them come strapped to intercontinental missiles. The other 40 are tactical warhead, sitting in bunkers, on trucks, on bombers, ready to use. And the countries that already had nukes, their arsenals get cut down to 52. America, Russia, China, or reduce. So now Vatican City has nuclear parity with the United States. Tuvalu has parity with Russia. North Korea wakes up to discover its biggest enemy has been brought down to its own level. Can humanity avoid using them? And if not, how long do we have? The instinct is to say mutually assured destruction will save us. It has worked for 80 years. Nobody fires first because firing first means dying second. But mutually assured destruction only works if everyone holding a button is a rational actor who wants to live. And that assumption breaks the moment you start handing nukes to 190 countries instead of 9. The math is brutal. With 9 nuclear powers, you need all 9 to behave forever. With 190, you need every single one of them to behave. Every single day, forever. The probability of one bad actor stops being a worry and starts being a guarantee. The first few minutes are pure panic, because every leader on Earth wakes up to the same calculation. They know they have 50 nukes. They also know that the country they hate most has 50 nukes. And they know that whoever fires first wins. There is no longer a stable second strike advantage for the superpowers, because America only has 52. The doctrine that kept the world quiet for decades evaporates overnight. Whichever country has the most paranoid leader, the shortest fuse, or the most volatile neighbor moves first. The honest estimate floating around is 20 minutes. The Middle East ignites before anyone else. Iran has spent decades inches away from a bomb. Now it has 50. Israel already had nukes, but its arsenal just shrank by an order of magnitude, and several of its neighbors are suddenly nuclear powers. The distances are tiny. Tel Aviv to Tehran is under 1,000 miles. There is no time to verify a launch, no time to think. Saudi Arabia and Iran have been running a Cold War through proxies for 40 years. That Cold War goes hot in an afternoon. Whoever launches first does it knowing they will die in retaliation, but believing that paradise is on the other side of the blast. And there are enough leaders in that region with that exact belief to make the trigger pull a certainty, not a possibility. Then Africa goes, and Africa is a different kind of disaster because Africa has dozens of countries where the central government does not actually control its own territory. Somalia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Sudan, South Sudan, Central African Republic. These are nations where warlords run regions the size of European countries, where civil wars have been grinding for decades, and where the official government would happily sell a nuke to lighten the national debt. So now, instead of 50 warheads sitting in one secure bunker, you have nukes scattered across compounds, militia camps, and unmarked trucks. The first nuclear civil war happens within days. A government on the losing end of a rebellion uses tactical nukes on its own soil to halt an advance. The rebels, who control half the country, use theirs the night before. The continent rewrites its borders in fire. And then there is the side effect nobody planned for. Terrorist organizations and cartels do not need to launch an ICBM. They need to acquire one warhead and drive it somewhere. With 50 nukes scattered across 190 countries, the security gap is enormous. A nuke goes missing in West Africa. Another disappears from a Central American stockpile. A cartel in Mexico now has the leverage to demand anything from anyone. Because the threat is no longer drug enforcement, it is a major American city. Hamas does not need to build a bomb anymore. Hezbollah does not need a delivery system. They just need one corrupt colonel and a flatbed truck. Eastern Europe gets ugly fast. Ukraine wakes up with 50 nuclear weapons and a frontline war it has been fighting for years. The Russian arsenal is suddenly smaller than it has ever been. The temptation to end the war by ending Moscow is enormous. And the calculus for Russia is the exact same in reverse. The frozen conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, two countries the size of New Jersey, becomes a nuclear standoff with response times measured in seconds. North Korea, which used to be the irrational outlier, becomes one of the more predictable nuclear powers because at least everyone has been thinking about North Korea for 60 years. The new wildcards are countries nobody ever modeled: Myanmar, Eritrea, Belarus. There's a technical wrinkle worth understanding. 25 megatons is an absolutely enormous bomb. The biggest weapons in actual arsenals today are around 1 megaton. A 25 megaton warhead is not really a tactical weapon, no matter what label you put on it. It is too heavy to fit on most missiles, too destructive to use anywhere near your own border. For some smaller countries, the 40 so-called tactical nukes are essentially unusable without a strategic bomber they do not own. But that does not stop them from being valuable. They can be sold. They can be traded. They can be detonated by truck. They can be smuggled. The 10 ICBMs are the immediate danger. The other 40 are the long-tail nightmare that fuels the next century of black market weapons trafficking. And here is the strange wrinkle of this scenario. A few countries actually become safer. New Zealand, which has been famously nuclear-free since the 80s, suddenly holds 50 warheads it does not want. The most likely outcome there is a fire sale to an ally or an extremely awkward decommissioning ceremony. Canada, Japan, Switzerland, places with stable governments and no enemies, would mostly try to hand their stockpile back to anyone who would take it. The Vatican gets 50 nukes and a real estate problem. But the existence of those calm corners does not save the world, because the world is now defined by its worst actor, not its best. How long does humanity actually have? The optimistic estimate is a week, and that estimate assumes a level of rational restraint that nobody alive today has ever witnessed under those conditions. The realistic estimate is hours. The pessimistic estimate is 20 minutes, because that is roughly how long it takes from the announcement for the first paranoid leader to convince themselves that striking first is safer than waiting. The first detonation triggers the second, which trigger the third, and the chain does not stop at the original two countries. Every leader watching the first nuke land has to decide whether they are next, and if they decide yes, they fire preemptively. The cascade is not theoretical, it is the structure of the situation. Within the first week, the Middle East is uninhabitable. Several African countries have ceased to exist in any meaningful political sense. There has been at least one exchange in South Asia, one in the Caucasus, and one that nobody can explain. The Northern Hemisphere is suddenly experiencing a global temperature drop from particulate matter in the upper atmosphere. Crops fail, supply chains collapse. The countries that did not fire are dealing with the consequences anyway, because radiation does not care about borders and famine does not respect treaties. Does humanity actually go extinct? Probably not. 50 nukes per country sounds like a lot, but spread across 200 countries, most of them are still parked in their original bunkers when the dust settles. The Southern Hemisphere, especially places like Argentina, Australia, and Southern Africa, are far enough from the major exchanges to keep functioning. Antarctica, which has no nukes and nobody trying to launch any, is technically the safest place on Earth. The species survives. Civilization does not, at least not in the form anyone recognizes today. The institutions that held the modern world together, international trade, global travel, the internet, the food system, all of them are gone within a year. The real lesson is the one that the people who designed our actual nuclear posture figured out a long time ago. The reason we have not had a nuclear war is not because humans are wise. It is because there are only 9 fingers on the button. Add 180 more and the only thing that changes is how fast the inevitable happens. 20 minutes, 20 hours, 20 days. It does not really matter. The world we live in right now is one bad decision away from this scenario already. The only reason it has not happened is that the bad decision has not been made yet. Give every nation 50 nukes and you stop relying on restraint. You start relying on luck. And luck eventually runs out.